Tanse kita tamskarna kiyoga ya nanas kumunasmina ya tagise gagap mamigusya nubaya pamuisa ya machita minuti ya atioga ngagismun. So just greetings to everybody, and then thank you for the ones that showed up face to face here. It's kind of really nice to get together in this kind of manner once again because of COVID and 2 years of whatever we've been through here. But I want to start out with just a quick little prayer, just because of the just the stories that we're going to share and sort of like the visiting that we're going to do, and as well as just the protocol that was given for tobacco. Appreciate that to the organizers, and then as well as Mika for dreaming up of an institute like this to share our wisdom, our histories, our worldview, and a lot of the background information that go to our ceremonies, where we get into prayer, where we get into sit with our elders actually. So if you want to just join me really quickly, and I know there's little ones too, or whoever is joining online, as well as to acknowledge them. And I came 4 hours, drove 4 hours, maybe a little more actually today. It's about a 4-hour drive if it's on good roads, but today it was like white knuckling it up here. So this is probably why I want to decompress a little bit and start out with prayers, but also just for starting when we do, I usually like to show up ahead of time, but for this day, I guess nature had a different plan for all of us. But just also just appreciation for those of you that stayed this long to start this storytelling festival or storytelling sessions off, because I know there's a really amazing lineup that are going to be following like what I'm going to start here. So might as well, if you want to join me, just pray in your own ways. I'm going to use my language, and I'm going to pray for a good start. And if you pray in a church, pray in the church. If you pray a certain way that you're taught, pray that certain way. We're gifted a different way to pray as well. And then this is why I use the language. So I'm very fortunate to have that. So we'll do it all together if we can. Just a short little prayer. Minanip na nask mo yan, sti mga kapits na mago yan. Hawanip mauskayo yan, kainan tugitim go yan. Maga ng skitin, hinahib mga gisti putamyo, hatayo kyo na atsumuno, hegihtig, hagap mo pinatsiguspagan. Hawanip na nask mo, magnaunistanan ita, kapamamyo, utngan, hanistanan. Minang uskais, sagot agap ng tutag, ego hatayo kyo na atsumuna. Minang giwisto, kapam kisks. Kiskis tan sami tago tamiuma askiuta wana mina kihte gamit na nasko maggusto aga mimuchi gusto au gnisu tagam sagin skin goya ko ta tugis go mani ko nigum gis musta moya minan joas misna nagnusumna nakakio tinigan muitsko ga pigit ga ni taugut maga tan nistanan nigano ki maitapia hai maitia. So thank you, Mika, and then thank you to again just for people that are here, and then thanking the University of Saskatchewan. The first time I've been in this area, St. Thomas More. It's actually a really nice area, and so as I was coming here and driving here. I didn't think too much about what type of stories I'm going to tell, because I was just really focused on like just trying to get here in one piece. And then like things happen, then my vehicle starts acting up a little bit. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to take it easy and just like, I'll get there when I get there. But really nice to see the faces here, the familiar faces, our relatives. I really appreciate you guys coming here. So on the way here, as I was driving, there was and I just about grabbed it and I'm like, never mind, I'll just leave everything. But it was a turtle shell that we were supposed to finish. And it was a shell that was it's a rattle, it's a grandmother's rattle. And I should have brought it, but then I think maybe a good place to start is sort of talking about why the heck we call this place Turtle Island. I think that would be really beneficial because all the information is written by the best architect that we know, and that's Gaxiwat Mantu. So Ximantu is what we say when we acknowledge the creator. And then that's the one that I prayed to just before we started here. And then I was praying even on the way here. And then I also know that there was like feasts that were associated to make this Story Institute functioning and available to people to sort of database our stories. So this turtle, we have, when I look back at the turtle stories or Turtle Island stories, we've lived through ice ages. There's a couple that I know. And then there's also a flood story. So that's a climate change story. And I went out to Denmark last month here, a really quick over, and it was a climate change conference. And all these lawyers were getting together and they were really discussing like a lot closer to them, which is Greenland. And then that's who colonized Greenland is the Denmark. And what's happening there is a lot of that the ice on there, the shields that are on there, they're melting and at an unbelievable pace. So I knew about this like a while back, and terms like greenhouse effect, you learn terms as global warming and so on. So I went back to the elders and I'm like kind of panic mode, and I'm thinking like, is this doom or gloom? I was asking them, like, what do you think of this ozone layer, this greenhouse effect, like this, it's depleting, and so on. And I was thinking in my mind, I was expecting them to say, well, that's it for us, human beings, that's it for us. And it was a good run at our time on Earth. And so that's what I was expecting. And then it was interesting what their response was. He said, well, just go back to the old ways of teachings, those old stories, those old Tayokana, which are teaching stories. And then snow fell like way more up north. It's probably melted a little more down here. But during this time in the wintertime, when Mother Earth sort of changes her utagu, which is her blanket, into a kind of like a orange yellow blanket, into a white blanket, which gives her sort of rest. And it gives the bears that time to go sleep one night, as well as those hibernating amphibians and animals and whatever else is resting at this time. This is a time where we can tell these types of stories, which is like the timing was just perfect. And I know that there was a feast and pipes that were lifted for this as well. So I wanted to openly acknowledge them as well. And I said that in my prayer that they did do that. So I was sitting with these elders and I was asking them and expecting, am I ready to ask these type of questions? And am I ready to hear this information that you're going to go back? And then they say, just go back to the old teachings, learn how to cook over a fire. The fire is just a beautiful thing, but a fire is a clean place for us. And they called it kutawan. And that fire, just like I'm feeling a fire right here right now, actually, I knew there was something I was hearing. There that spirit is right there. And this is where we taught a lot of our stories conveniently. I didn't plan this, I've never been here, but this is good. But this is where story happened. This is where the teachings of our laws happened, how to be really good to each other as human beings, how to be good to the four-leggeds as human beings, to know our spot according to the flyers, and then also how powerful the elements are as human beings, right? So we're kind of, in a lot of ways, pitiful as human beings, because like we have all these clothes, we have like, it took me probably an unbelievable time to get here realistically. Otherwise, it would have took me probably weeks to get here from where I live. But we have these vehicles, you know, and on this way down, I was praying like, oh, please truck, get me there, you know, don't act up now. But you can pray to those things. You can pray for technology to work, like these microphones, these cameras, and then all your vehicles as well. Our elders say, pray for them, give them thanks, you know, talk to them because they're there, and they've replaced a lot of old technologies like the dog, the toboggan, and then now we have the skidoo, we have the horses that were replaced by what we have now, vehicles and things that fly. So those type of things, that's why prayer is so central. And fire is an element as well. And when they said, just go learn how to cook over a fire, you know, learn how to make a fire, learn outdoor and bush skills, go out, know how to hunt, know how to berry pick, know how to pick medicines. And if something goes wrong, we're going to be okay if you learn those basic skills. Don't get so disengaged that you don't know how to do that anymore. So this is where it was sort of like a journey that I've been sent on along with a whole bunch of other people. But that's where we started like meeting people like Amy and a whole bunch of other people out in BC, and people that are that love being outside, you know, that love being in the outdoors by the river. And then when we started going out to these certain places, this is where you started hearing the stories come out of the landscape. So going back to the elders back home, one of them particularly, who's going to be speaking, probably sharing stories here, it's Nuhchawi, so is Barry Hennique, and I gotta catch up to him. Been going 100 miles an hour, and I just have to go visit those uncles of mine, those aunties of mine. But he was always bugging me. That one particularly, he was like, "Are you teaching bow making skills? You know, are you teaching how to make arrows and stuff?" And I'm like, "Nah, I'm not gonna do that. I've got guns if I need to go have like a moose, if I need to go harvest something like that. I have like these other things that I'm counting on now." And he's like, no, you got to learn how to do that. And then I spent some more time with other elders and all across. I have to give acknowledgement to them as well. And one of them was Jerry Saddleback as well. And I think he's going to be possibly, and he's got stories, lots of songs that go with his knowledge. But he's a bow maker himself. And so I was just pushing it off. And every time I saw him, he would ask me, "Are you making bows? Are you making bows?" I'm like, "No, not yet, not yet." And in my back of my head, I'm like, "I'm probably not gonna ever," but I'm not listening to him, right? And then eventually we had a feast, and then we had a round dance, like an old style round dance that was outside. And pipes were lifted, and then stories were starting to be shared by the old guys. And I'm in a unique place where I'm a helper, which means I serve. I help put up the lodges. I just listen to the elders tell me what to do, and then they basically just boss us around. And I'm a good listener. I got beautiful big ears for that, and I always I'm very happy about these big ears. But sometimes they don't listen, and but when they do work, all right, I really put them on when I'm around the elders, because you don't want to miss a beat. So I'm there, and I get to be front and center in front of their pipes when they're praying with those pipes. And I get to be so close that I get to light those pipes, and I get to hear what they're praying about and where they're praying to. And so in these ceremonies, one particular place that was really amazing was they called it Ogumawati. And Ogumawati is in English chief mountain. and Chief Mountain is south of Calgary. And I don't know where, I didn't know where this place was ever. And I just knew it was like, it's west, and because there's mountains over there. So one of them's got to be a chief, you know. And then so eventually we started trekking out that way, and we started really looking at the songs that we sing in ceremony, and where are these songs, the lyrics, we'll say, there's lyrics in there, but they're about places on Turtle Island. And one of them was this Ugumawachi, and they talked about the first human coming down to Ugumawachi. And then on the south side of that mountain, that's where the four-legged human, which is what we know as the bear, met this two-legged. And then there's a song that's associated with that. And they meet, and then that's the first time where the bear is starting to show us human beings what's good to eat, where can we dig roots for medicines, where can we pick berries, so it was just kind of acting as a guide for this two-legged, which was sort of pitiful, bald, weak, slow, all these different things. So it was a lot of our teachings will come from the four-leggeds. And another one that took pity on us was the buffalo. And it was sort of like, when I'm classifying these stories, you know, and I went through this in certain areas of my life where you're picking teams, and then all of a sudden, like, people are, I want Jeff, I want Mike, where's Kevin? No, not yet, Kevin. You know, and then you're there, pick me, right? And so that was kind of like as human beings, that's what we are to the Creator. And well, not to the Creator, we'll say, because the Creator is kind of like the teacher. He's not supposed to be picking sides and whatnot, right? He loves everything, everybody. But looking at the animals, looking at all creation, the Creator knew that we're sort of like the underdog, we'll say. And so they started asking and talking, well, who's going to look after the two-leggeds as they're here on Earth? And then it was there when the buffalo came and said, I'll look after him. You know, I'll look after this human being. I'll clothe them. I'll give them shelter. I'll give them meat. I'll give them tools. I'll give them a future. You know, I'll give them work. I'm a lot of work, you know. So that's where the buffalo came in. So again, that was looking at us and taking pity on us. And then all of those other little four-legged, like smaller ones in certain areas, like the Moose Nation, came ahead as well, and that was the same thing as well. But the moose wasn't as easy or wasn't as friendly as the buffalo. When the buffalo came, I'm like, okay, I'm here. I'm gonna look after you. You know, don't worry about anything else. But the buffalo, I mean the moose, Mosawa, that one was really mean to us originally. Was really kind of played and would run us over. Like if there was a camp, let's say if there's a Cree camp there, they would get together and be like, okay, Moose, let's go. They were camped over there. And then they would go over there and they would go kick our lodges over. They would bulldoze us. They would bite us. They would just a game to them. And then eventually there was one relative of ours, and his name was Nyanims. And Nyanims, we have a ceremony that's associated with this Nyanims. And when I started studying him through the elders, he had lots of adventures, just like Wisagitsak, which is eventually who we'll get to. But so the moose were messing around with this our relatives. They kick us over, bulldoze us, just games after games, and we kind of got sick and tired of it, but we couldn't do too much because the Moose Nation is pretty powerful, really big, just almost even taller than the Buffalo Nation, leggy, you know, and they could kick hard. So eventually one of our relatives was sent to go talk with this Moose Nation. And this Moose Nation kind of didn't take us serious at first. In fact, the chief was kind of had a really big yumsutiskan, right? A really big antlers. And so Nyanims went up to him and said, how Ogumau Muswa, the chief moose, I was sent here and I'm supposed to let you know that you're not supposed to be bullying us anymore. You're not being good to us two-leggeds. And Musa kind of grunted back as they do. Oh, right. And I said, who are you? You know, and then that's the first time that Nyanims met this chief moose. And well, I'm here, sent here. You're supposed to change your ways, Musa. And Musa kind of went backwards. He's like, oh, well, we're gonna have to fight. You know, you're gonna have to fight me. And again, that chief moose was sort of like, I'm just gonna bulldoze this other, you know, this other two-legged, another one, you know, down. So he goes back. And then what was the cool thing about this is what I'm wearing is a part of the story. So I'm wearing like like leather, traditionally tanned leather. And I wear this in knowing how much work that goes into making leather. So this is leather that was made by us, by friends, by family members, and also the beadwork as well tells a story that I know where I'm connected. So if people have floral designs, you'll see them in powwow outfits. They have all sorts of floral designs. What we're telling through these vests and through this clothing is they're warm, they look absolutely fascinating, but the fascination is through the beadwork and the floral designs. And what we're communicating to the world when we wear these floral designs is we know that we come from Mother Earth. We know that's our relative. We know Waguhtun, how we're related to this Mother Earth, where we come from. That this is what we communicate through our beadwork on our moccasins, on our gloves, and then on our clothing. And then this also acts like protection as well. And they're very warm and very functional as well. So this Buffalo Nation and the Moose Nation, this is what they decided after this confrontation. So this moose goes back and then he tries to bulldoze Nyanims. Nyanims stood his ground. And as the moose was coming in just like this, was going to come bulldoze and maybe run over Nyanims. And this is like when we tell the story is probably like right now, because we just finished hunting. We're still working on hides right now. But that's the time where we tell these stories. That's the time when those old hunters and the old ladies would tell us these stories, is when we're possibly holding a leg and helping out, you know, as they're skinning and processing and butchering this animal that's going to feed us. These are the stories that go with this. So, so he's coming in, and then Nyanims grabbed him and stopped him on top of his, right in between his antlers right here, and stopped them. And you can actually still see the handprint on top of the forehead area. And then the other one stopped him right in the middle of the nose. So if you ever have people that are like hunters or harvesters of that animal, you can actually still put your hand right in between the nostrils and then on the nose and on the forehead. The indentation is still on there, right? So now, after that, there was a dead stop, right? The moose knew. It was like, uh-oh, you know, maybe I chewed off a little bit than I, you know, or bite off a bit more than I can chew. And he said, okay, all right, what do you want me to do? And so this is where the negotiation happened. And so this is also associated to treaty making. We have treaties with these different animals. And we have number treaties that are very young. They're not very old. These number treaties, peace and friendship treaties, those stem back a long, long time when Turtle Island was starting to, when it was starting to come out. So we started finding out this relationship, our kinship, right from the bear, when the bear was starting to show us, this is good root for you. Don't eat this one, eat this one. Dig that one, cut that one, maybe peel that tree, pick that berry, don't eat that berry, so the education was always given to us by these four-leggeds. And this particular time, when they were stopped there, that moose said, okay, from here on in, I'm going to change my ways, and I'm sorry that that we were picking on you. And it's an anti-bullying story, which is cool because nobody really likes to be bullied, even from the animals. If they were bullies, it goes back that far. And then so this particular, the truth was, Nyanim said, you're supposed to stop. And then what we'll do in return, when we harvest a bull moose, is we'll cut off umumatayo, which is the bell at the bottom of the chin, kind of like where my double chin is, right around there on the moose. And then, as hunters, and the first time I did it, I was maybe about 11, maybe even younger. And then my dad's like, nah, dog with that. And I was like, okay, where do I go hang this? So, and he pointed to a tree. So I went to go hang it there. So every fall, I would be grabbing these things off of him and I would go hang them. And then eventually I was not sure. I just asked, I was like, why do I keep on hanging this for you? You know, what's this all about? And then he said, that's what he said. And it means in translation, it's one story. It's worth one story. So there's currency involved there, or there's something involved there dealing with a story. And so I kept on asking, and eventually my first hunt happened. And then I started doing that. And then I started asking even more elders that we would be hunting with, what is this all about? What is this? Why do we do this? You know? And then that's where that Nyanim story came from, was on some of those hunting trips. So now another thing too was, so that umumatayu acts like a reminder. And we take cloth, we take all these different things, and we hang them on ceremonial lodges, like prayer cloths. So that's kind of like that reminder when we put that prayer cloth, and it comes from the moose, to remind us of that treaty or that relationship that was developed there, and that evolution of that relationship. And then in return, Nyanim said, we'll put that on the tree, but in return as well, when we have this ceremony called Kapihusumo, we'll put this as the lead soup, your nose. And then we cut it off, and sure enough, still to this day, we'll make moose nose soup. And I always tell the kids and ask the kids, like, how do you cook moose nose soup, right? And they're like, really, moose nose soup? Yeah, how do you cook it? And then one of my uncles, this little joke, he's not with us anymore, but he always used to say this: you boil the snot right out of it, he says. Eh? The kids love that joke. But so in memory of him, I always throw that in all the time. But we take it off a certain part. So the anatomy is really studied on this moose, and you actually start cutting it off. And what we do is we singe all the fur off, and there's a certain way you do it. And then you cube it, and you literally boil it for hours. You really do boil it for hours. And it's only reserved for older people, mostly the elders or the pipe carrier or the leads of the ceremonies. And for years and years, I remember, because it smelled so good, because I'm the one, like one of the guys that will lift this and will we'll scoop out the soup and feed everybody. And then that's the first soup because it's the lead soup in most of those ceremonies. It would be all gone by the time it's us that are going to be eating. So like for years, you're like, geez, I wish I could eat some of this, you know? Oh, no, it's only for the elders. I'm like, okay. Eventually, we had a ceremony at the school, and I'll say this openly at first, you know, but I as soon as I started learning the stories, actually, I can't wait till I eat the next moose nose soup, believe it or not. But it wasn't like that at the beginning, right? It had to take it took a little time. So the first time I got to eat it, there was a little bit left over, and I'm like, okay, today's my day. And then somebody on one of those scapios like gave me a little bit, just a little bit. And then they have to pray for the food, and you can't start eating till the elders basically finish praying, and somebody says, okay, mitsuk, right? Eat. So that time came. I had my little soup, a little bit left there. And then I'm like, okay, right on, mitsuk. So I start eating this moose nose soup. And all I could tell is like the smell of it. It's kind of has like a singed, smoked flavor, but the texture of it is like eating cartilage. You're literally eating cartilage. I can't explain it anymore. And it was like very interesting. And then you have to be a model to the little ones, so you can't be making noise, faces, and like, oh, this is gross. So I'm just chewing and chewing, and I swallow it, and I'm like, oh, geez, the elders can have this, you know, they can have this new moose nose soup. Like I just couldn't. I was. It took me a little while, but the stories helped. You know, the hunting helped me just love that moose nose soup. Now I can't wait to have it. I always have it handy. I have it waiting for the elders if they ever need that that part of the nose. I'm glad. I'm like, hey, I got one. You know, cut it up for you. I'll get it all ready, and then I'll give it to you guys. You know, so, but it took. You know, it is a lot of hard work. It's not easy, but also you start gaining the respect, being resourceful, not throwing anything away, trying to use the most out of this animal. And then also when we're in ceremony, we'll feed our ancestors using this fire, right? So here's that long story. And this is the way they work. These stories, they're just like very intro. They go into further detail. But remember my one uncle, he kept on asking, oh, did you learn how to make bows yet? Or you make bows yet? I'm like, not yet. You know, finally, a few years ago, I searched out, put it in prayers, put it out there. And eventually there was a bow maker that was available to come share the skill of bow making. So as an Ostapios, we'll take all the food from everybody. And this is a spiritual dish. And this is a spiritual dish that we feed our ancestors that are gone ahead of us. So in Cree, we actually don't have a goodbye. We don't have like, bye, you know, we'll see you later. We have a see you later, actually, but we don't have a goodbye, because goodbye is kind of like, the definition would be like, it's definitely goodbye, you know, we're not going to see each other again. But in Cree, we don't have an equivalent. We'll have muistas, which is later, or gihtomasamin, until again. But we don't have an equivalent for goodbye, because our death, a physical body death here on earth, the spirit goes ahead of us, right? So that it travels ahead, the spirit goes somewhere. A body stays here, turns to Mother Earth, but the spirit travels ahead. So our ancestors are so close all the time. They're all around us all the time. And in fact, if we acknowledge, let's say, Nimosum, I'll say, the ones, I have a grandfather that's living, but I have a grandfather that's not living, or grandfathers that aren't living. So we have to add a little thing on the back to let them know that they're not in this world anymore. So we'll say, nimosumpan. We'll say nimosum for a living, nimosumpan for the ones that gone ahead of us, because eventually we're going to see them again. All right, unless you're a Dracula or something like that that gets to live a lot longer. But even them, they have a time span, right? But it's that just keeping with the theme of Halloween that was just a little while ago. But again, that it's the spirit dish. And this took me a long time again, as they do. And I'm sure I'm going to be coming to more and more lessons as I go through this life. But I kept on, scratching my head. Why the heck does this guy want us to make bows? What's the significance of this? And then eventually another relative of ours started popping in through elders, through stories. And that one, his name was Tsagapis. That was his name when he was like us, all of us here that are going through this earth walk right now. His name was Tsagapis, and he was orphaned very early. And his sister, and I always try to get the women, if they're hunters, go hunt. If they know how to fish, go fish. In our tribes, there's not really that gender specific. It's like, oh no, that's a man thing, that's a woman thing. No, it's really shared, especially when you're trying to get food on the table. So again, Tsagapis, him and his sister, Umsa, we don't even know her name the entire time till actually when they leave this earth. Umsa, his older sister, and Tsagapis, they were orphaned. And as a little baby, Umsa would make Tsagapis a little baby bow, kind of like a little small little toy bow. And Tsagapis that was his toy. He would shoot it, and then he would crawl for his arrow, and then he would shoot it again. So that was his entertainment, if you will. He would just loved doing this. And then eventually he ended up, because he was he was getting really strong doing this, and he was unbelievably really strong, but he was not very tall. He wasn't gonna be a big man, but he was strong, and he was a little shorter as he grew. Eventually he busted his first bow and arrow, and then Umsa started making another one, a little stronger, because Tsagapis was getting too strong for this first bow and arrow. And then eventually he started walking now. He was crawling at first, now he's walking. And then eventually busted that one. And then the third one happened. And then he started making, and this is his sister started teaching him how to make these different bows and making his own arrows, because he was shooting them all over the place and he would lose them. And as little boys do, he was like, I'm going to shoot this farther, and then he would lose them. So sister started getting smarter and said, I'm going to teach you how to make these things, because I'm getting tired of making you all these bows and these arrows, because you're busting them and losing them. So he started getting really good at making bows, and also really honing the skills of the different type of arrows that are out there, different types of woods. So he was a scientist, he was a researcher. He knew, what type of shoots were good, how to prune trees so they grow straight, and he would look ahead of time and he would say, okay, this is actually a really good hazelnut patch right here. I'm going to prune these ones so they grow straight, so they're not growing crooked. So 2 years, 3 years down the line, this is where I'm going to harvest my bows from, right? So again, pruning was a part of this, and really working with nature, really working with ecology, I guess. And eventually, he was very good at also fibers. That was another thing. Bimnahwan. And these are the different fibers that you would use to sewing, like these little fibers from minute little sewing patterns to stitching quill work to making moccasins, all the way to making snares and bowstring, right? So have all these different fibers. And one that we use up there quite a bit is sinew from the animals, of course, but also the fibers of stinging nettle, masanak, right? That's those are, and pimna kwan is ipim naman. You're twisting, and then you're twisting and you're reverse twisting. And it's actually a really, I love working with fibers because it's very calming. And then you're just so concentrated, and then you can just see, wow, I'm making rope, like this is amazing. And then even if it's this long, you test it out and you're like, oh man, I can't even bust this rope. So maybe there's like students out there that'll want to learn to study fibers, maybe to, you know, to make that rope. But if you have rope, you have the ability to making snares, you have the ability of making nets, you have the ability of making all sorts of technology that'll be able to feed you. Maybe you need to make a fishing net, you know, to scoop out your fish, or whatever you're going to need it for. But for that one, he knew all those different skills, and it was skills that were given to him by not a father, not a mother, but his older sister. So this is why I say, like, women, if you want to be a harvester in that manner, do it, because our best hunter, our best bowman, our best bower was taught by a woman, and that was his older sister, and that's how the transferring happened. So again, he got really good at this, and then eventually what had happened was he would go on adventures. So these are the ones that go back to back to back. There's all these different types of adventures. And what's cool about this story is all the nations were starting from the mountains, going down to where it is now, Florida, all the way up the plains, and then all the way east towards like Mi'kmaq, Innu, and all those eastern relatives of us, the Eastern Cree. They all have stories of Chagapis. They all have stories of this person that's was one of our relatives. So one of them, and he would always say, I want to go, I heard there was people over here, I want to go check them out. And then his older sister would say, you better not go there. Don't go there, because that's where the people that make those, that know how to boil water in a certain way, they're going to boil you. They'll boil you to death. You better not go over there. And then so they had a beautiful technology of boiling water. And then so, and he would say, no, Nimis, you scare me. Oh, I won't go there. I won't go there. And then as young, boys, he kind of didn't listen a little bit, so he went over there, right? And he went, and then he was a little older by the time that happened. And eventually he went there, and yes, that's where he saw them. It was fascinating. It was a new technology. They were using like rocks and stuff like that to boil water, and very hot boiling water. It was something that it was first time he saw this. So when I listen to these type of stories, it's that idea of traveling to learn. It's that idea of exploration to learn. And then he would bring back these certain technologies back to his home fire. And then he would say, hey, check this out. I know how to boil water. And then, blow his sister away. Like, wow, how come we didn't think of that? But we have those type of stories. So he went over there, but he was a lot older, and I'm skipping like a whole whack of these stories. But this is kind of interesting because he started really honing his skill with the bow, and he had a reputation. He had a really good reputation of like being a really excellent shot, and so good that he could hit moving targets, so good that he could he was okay just as long as he had the materials there. He was all right. He was very smart. And then he started thinking, man, I kind of like these people that know how to boil water, and he started hanging out. They're not that bad, like my sister just overdoes it all the time. These people are very friendly. And but what he saw with that particular group was they were a little bit hairy. a little more hairy than him, right? And they had hair on their body, hair on their legs. And then eventually what happened was they were boiling water, and I don't know how the heck this happened, but he was befriended by one of the guys there, and he liked them, and he stayed there a little longer. And eventually they would go shoot squirrels together. They would go shoot all these different things, and he found a kind of like a best friend in this group. And eventually that particular guy scolded himself. I don't know how the heck it happened, but burnt his hair off his body, right? Off his back, off his, he was burnt, no hair. And then he started thinking, you know what? You're actually pretty handsome. I have somebody for you. He started talking like that to his buddy. And it's like, when you heal up, and he gave him some medicine. When you heal up, I have somebody that I want to introduce you to, he says, eh? And I said, okay, all right. So that day came, he says, I want you to come home with me, right? So this is Mr. Matchmaker here. He goes and he says, Nimnis, I found this handsome man. He's such a good hunter. He's just handsome, and he come from those people from the boiling water technology. And they're actually not that bad people, as you said, so he's proving it wrong. So he was very handsome, and then they clicked right away because he was very handy, he was very intelligent, a good provider. So eventually his idea worked. They became a couple. So it was a win-win for him. He had a sister, and then he had Nistao. He would say, "Hey, Nistao." That was his brother-in-law. So eventually he would say, "Nistao, let's go hunt. Let's go do something." So he had a best friend now. He wasn't doing this alone. So he's kind of, sneaky intelligence, I guess, in a way. But thinking about his sister as well, but thinking about himself too, and not doing life alone, and when that reminds me, when we're in our bubbles, when we were isolated, when we were in that time where we had to be away from human beings, and now it's the healthiness of creating community. It's the healthiness of bringing stories like this in centers like this where it could be safe, and you can transfer stories that are really old, that are from like this island, that are local, that are really treasured. And I think, in my opinion, sort of put away quietly too long. And then now I think what we're doing is we're trying to dust them off to keep them alive, just like a library book. Conveniently, we're in a library book. There's some really amazing books in here, I'm sure. And you find a gem once in a while, right? So that's what I see the Story Institute is. You're going to find lots of gems as you're going to listen to the older ones. So that day happened, and then you're gonna have to tell me how much time I have left, because I'll just stay here all day if you let me. So and I also know that there's little ones that are listening too, right? But there's a time where he started kind of he was envious of his sister and Wistawa, right? Nistawa and my sister, they're such a good couple. And he just kept on thinking, I wonder if I could find somebody that would love me like this, So he was starting to get that age as well, of having a girlfriend, or possibly potentially a wife, because he's like, I'm a good hunter, I can provide, I'm a good worker, and maybe there's somebody out there for me, So he started asking, sister, what did you hear about this group over here that live over here? Because he was always kind of going all over. He sort of knew where the different nations were, the different tribes, whether they lived by the river, whether they were by cliffs, whether they were in the forest. So there was kind of they were always all scattered. So eventually he says, Nimitz, he says, I heard there was really good people right by the mountains, like in the foothill area. And then his sister knew what he was talking about, and then says, "Ah, no, us, Nyanims, no way, or Zakapis, no way, don't go there. Those are they're gonna hang you. They make swings, and they've been really good with rope. You think you're good? These people are really good with rope. They're gonna tie you up, and that's gonna be the end of you, you know." And then he's like, "Oh, no, 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 Nimis, you're scaring me. I'm not gonna go there." So, you know, took a little time. He's like, "Well, I'm gonna go hunting." So guess where he goes? He goes to that place where they make the real beautiful rope, extra strong rope. So he goes there, and then they kind of knew of him already too. And then the Ugimao, the chief of that that group there, says, "Oh yes, good, Tagapis, you're here. We were expecting you. Boy, bless us." But the chief was kind of more of he was wanted to challenge him. You know, this legend. He's just a small little man. What the heck is the whole? What's so special about this Tagapis? You know, and then so he says, "I'm going to test his courage. I'm going to test him out, and I'm probably going to be the end of him too. So I'm going to make this swing, 2 swings," he says, "but I'm going to cut the string off of one, and I'm going to test his courage out, to test his you know, his mind out." And then so he goes, "Well, let's have a feast. And then after the feast, let's go have a swing competition. We'll go swing, and we'll go talk. We'll go visit. I want to get to know you." So sure enough, they have a feast, and then in that feast, they're sitting like this in a big group, and then he's looking back there, and he's like, "Oh, there's that special somebody," and then she's kind of giving him the eye, and then he's looking, and she's looking, and there was something special there. So he's like, "Oh yes, okay, so I'm gonna get into the good books of the chief here, the Ogama, and I better listen to him. Whatever he asks me, I'm gonna do." So sure enough, the chief saw that too. He saw that they were looking, and then goes, "Well, Jagapis, let's go have a swing. I want to test out these new ropes that we have here. Let's test this out." And then the chief actually really was really protective of the one that was, you know, looking at Jagapis. And then he got mad, and then this is where he came up with the idea. "No, I'm going to end this Tagapis. He's nothing but trouble. He's going to take our granddaughter away, and I don't want this little guy to take her from us. We love her." So he's cutting this rope really thin. And then eventually the competition came to that point where, "Well, let's go swing," right? There was all these little different things that they were doing. Eventually, let's go relax and enjoy ourselves. And where this swing was, it was kind of like a steep hill like this. And then they tied up the trees way up on top, and then they were swinging. And it was kind of like they would use, just like in Cree, we have these things called wiwipsuna, and they're very soothing. Any swinging motion, even as adults, we just love that idea of just swinging. It's very relaxing. We have hammocks, you know, as older people, and then we have babies that have these little swings. But this one was really big, and they were sitting on these swings. And eventually he goes on his swing. And then but Tagapis was told by somebody somewhere what the chief was doing, right? The chief was trying to trick him. He says, "No, no, 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 take mine," you know. And then so they switched, and the chief was praying that it wasn't the swing that was going to bust, and that was going to be the end of them. And eventually they were swinging, and then the chief busted his swing, and that was the swing that was supposed to be Tagapis's, and then went tumbling down the hill. And he saw this, and then Tagapis went to go retrieve him. And in this retrieval, he says, "I can bring you back to life. I have medicines. I know medicine, so you're going to be okay." Like you're a little busted up, but in return, he says, because he's kind of a little slick, in return, if you do heal and you start walking again from this fall, I want that granddaughter. I want to take her home. I want her to be my wife. And then he's like, "Okay, all right," you know, because he's just busted up bad. So sure enough, he got all the different medicines that was needed, all the patchwork that was needed on this chief. And then, yes, he did become alive. And eventually he did, he brought her back. He brought her, his wife back, right? So now there was two couples, right? And then she was so good because she reminded him of his sister, because she just loved all the different things that they did. And they were good at woodworking. They were good at all those like tanning hides, cooking, all those different medicines. There was not a day that was kind of like rest. There was no rest. You know, there's so much work to be done, and still to this day, it's like that in our camps, in our at home. If you get an animal, you're looking at a month's worth of work for sure, and that's going to sustain you for the whole winter, which is just going to be starting now. And eventually, what had happened was they started getting really good and functioning, and they had time to go actually just shoot squirrels, right? So this is where the astrology kicks in the ceremony. I mean, this storytelling, and this is kind of cool the way it was told to me. So I finally got there, and then and all of a sudden now it's time for Chagapis and his brother-in-law, Nistao, let's go hunting, you know, let's go shoot some squirrels. And so they went out, and there was a squirrel that was sitting really high on the spruce tree. And then Nistao or Wistao, his brother-in-law, kind of missed on an earlier one. The second one was like, Nistao, my turn. So he goes and he shoots, aims, and he hits this angochas, which is a squirrel. And then he's waiting for the squirrel to come down. Nothing comes down, right? It's hung up. So he's like, geez, I gotta go climb up and grab this, right? So he climbs up, and then he's reaching to where that where he's thinking that squirrel is, and all of a sudden, a little higher, he hears this, right? This little noise, and there's a squirrel a little higher. So he's like, stupid squirrel, right? And he hits, and I hit it for sure. He's waiting, nothing comes down. So he crawls a little higher. And this happens a couple times where that little squirrel's kind of, you know, shaking his head. Nope. So he's crawling, and eventually he crawled really high where he came to an edge like this. He came to an edge right where that tree was growing, and he jumped onto this edge, and he was looking around, and he was looking, and he's like, wow, what the heck? You know, there's nobody's here. Nobody lives here. I don't even see any tracks of like our relatives. And then he's looking around, and like there's lots of berries. There's lots of like the stuff that they need. The perfect willows, the perfect trees, there's birch trees, there's all these different medicines, like it's like was untouched. So he gets excited, and he's like, oh, I gotta get down, you know, never mind the squirrel. So he goes down. And then I always think about did all of you guys see Ice Age, that movie Ice Age? You know, that little squirrel that's always like chasing. We have a squirrel all the time. And I don't even know if he got that squirrel or that squirrel survived somehow anyway. But anyway, he crawls down, and then he goes and he says, Nista, we gotta go get my sister and my wife. There's an awesome place up there that we have to move up to, he says, and we got to go up there because nobody's up there. It's like perfect. It's a place that we should go right now. And then so they went home, and they packed up everybody, and they crawled up this spruce tree, and then jumped off of that cliff, onto that cliff, and then pushed over. And Yanim said, I don't want anybody to follow us up here. And he somehow got that spruce tree to lay down, or chopped it up, or I don't know how he did it, but he didn't want anybody falling up, because it was such a special land that they were at. And then he said to his sister, it was on the south side, it was over here. And then where his sister, he said, and his niece, Nista, says, Nista and Nimis, you guys walk over this way. You have to go over this way towards the east. And there's nice land over there. You guys settle over there, not very far, and we'll settle over here on the south side, he says, And then eventually where they ended up was what we call the moon, Dipscalpism. That was them going so high that they ended up on the moon. And then that his sister kept on walking east, and that she became Wapanatak, the morning star. So that's the morning star that we see that's still lit up to this day. So now here's the long closure of this bow story, right? So again, my Uncle Barry's like, are you making those bows yet? And finally I'm like, yes, I am, right? And then finally the story comes. So he goes, okay. So eventually we're doing a ceremony. And remember that bowl where we put in a little bit of food, a little bit of everything that's being served there, a little bit of fat, a little bit of Indian popcorn, a little bit of tea, a little bit of moose nose, a little bit of bannock, you know, all these little things. And then after they're prayed for, what we do is we'll go put that food on the south side of the fire. That's what we do as Oskapiusa. And what we do is the only one that knows where we say good, when we say goodbye, we don't say goodbye, we say see you later. The only one that knows that path up there is Chagapis, his wife, and then Umsa, who is Wapanatak, and his husband or her husband. So those four are the ones that know that path to where our relatives go when they leave this earth, right? Now, when we have a ceremony, that Chagapis and that full family that know that path, they'll round up all of our relatives and they'll say, hey, there's a pipe ceremony, there's a feast, there's a ceremony on your behalf. Let's go, you know? So they'll show them the way, and then they'll come when we're having ceremony, when we're having prayer, they come there and they come and bring health. They bring, like, if you're missing somebody that's not here anymore, you mourn, right? They help with that grieving process. They help with prayers. They give us even this thing called good luck, we call it. They can bring healing. They can bring all these different things for us, and they look after us, and we remember them, right? And so there's legacy that's even remembered as we do those ceremonies, because we're remembering those ones that taught us, you know, that maybe aren't here anymore. But like a lot of these stories, they came from elders that aren't here anymore, and I really miss them. I really honestly do miss them quite a bit. And Nimitata, I really miss them, because they're the ones that shared this in such a good way. And what we want to do is we want to keep these stories going, and maybe, you know, maybe there's somebody listening here, and when I'm finished this earth walk, give me a little bit of bannock, you know, feed me a little bit. Remember me, and I'll come give you good luck. But so on the south side, we'll put that fire. We'll put that food on the south side of the fire. And then here was the coolest thing. So Chagapis is spiritually there rounding up our family members. And he's like, okay. And then at the end, when it's done, sometimes there's a go home song. There's a go home, like a pipe or something like that, or a go home prayer where you're sending them back home to where they are, where it's nice over there. There's no sickness over there. It's just beautiful over there. It's really shiny over there. It's nice over there. They're in a good place. That's what we need to know. And when they're going over there, Chagapis, who became an Atayokan, which is like a teaching story, a legend, he'll gather all these spirits up, and they're kind of like little sparkling, like stars, like that. That's the best way I can explain. Some people will be able to see them. Sometimes I've seen a few of them, but every night, if you're out, sort of like maybe not in the city, sometimes you can see them. But if you see them sparkling out there, that's them. Those are how close they are. Our relatives are very, very nearby. And so he'll take them back, but he's the last one to leave that ceremony, whatever ceremony is happening. And then he'll take his arrow out of his, out of his bag of arrows. And then as he's leaving that last fire there, he'll take his arrow and he'll stab that food. And they don't need that much. They don't need that much because they're not huge. They don't have bodies. They have spirits, right? They just need a taste to remind. That's all they want. And they're hungry. They're not like, they don't have physical bodies where they have to eat lots. But it's the significance of him taking that, the rest of that food that's in that fire, and he takes it back to where those other ones are, which are possibly the forgotten ones. The ones that have nobody remembered here, or they just couldn't make it at that ceremony at that time. So we're always thinking of those people that are possibly even missing and murdered, like that type of things. We take care of that. That's why ceremony is so good, because when you listen to that story, you know that Jagapis will take back some of that food for those relatives of ours that are possibly forgotten, or they just couldn't get around to actually having a ceremony for them, to leave that, leave that spirit not hanging, but remembered, right? So that's that last little story there. That's why the bow and arrow was so significant to one of my uncles saying, hey, did you teach that, right? But it was a long, long time. Like that's like a decade full of every time I saw him, are you teaching that yet? And eventually got the, I got it up here. But you have to get it in here as well, in your hands, because you have to know how to paddle or how to hike, how to trek out there to go get your materials, how to split roots, how to split all the wood that's needed, the cordage that's needed. So there's a lot of science that was there, a lot of engineering that's involved. Yeah, so it's like all these stories are just beautiful. Yeah, but if there's any questions, like so we've got a little bit of time for questions as well. And then I know what time we're going till 3 o'clock. Yeah. If there's any questions, I could take some questions if they have some online or live here. How are you hooking up on Zoom? Oh, cool. Okay. Oh.
So a good writer can be a good storyteller, or should be a good storyteller.
Yeah. Like it's just, you know what it is I think it's like any skill. If you know how to write, then you're a good writer, right? Sometimes storytelling is a skill too, though. I've seen really good writers that sort of like, if you put them in front of people, they're like, oh, I don't know if I could do this, But it's but again, storytelling, you're talking in front of people, you're talking in front of, like, I don't even know how many people are there, but it's if you're, so thousands of people out there. But it's it took a little while, but like you always get a little bit anxious, the anxiety a little bit, like it's like but they say the second scariest thing to do is to talk in front of people. That's just, and it's higher than dying, physical dying, and people are, they mark these things out, they question these, but I like it because it's my Musum was a storyteller. Nogum is a storyteller right now. She's still around, which I'm very thankful for. And then also the ones that shared these stories with me as well. I think it would have helped if we normalize these with the younger ones too. I think that's key here as well, because let's say if they hear some of these stories as they're growing and they rehear them again, there's something else that they pick up off of there, right? And if there's no questions, I'll give you an example of a story. Okay.
I want to know who made your vest.
Oh, Nigawi, who's my mom, and then a guy from the States who's a buddy of mine. I traded this one, which is an elk hide, I think from down there, and I traded him some other things from Jay. His name is, and then this one is the one that beaded this one for me. So there's like 4 different hands or 5 different hands that went through this. Is my grandmother, so she beaded this one. Yeah. So it's a lot of skills that people need to, I guess, learn as well. That we need to.
Community that came together.
Yeah.
That together.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's not just one single person. Yeah, it's a number of different community. Wow. Jay is from California, you know. But I guess here's an example. So these.
Another question.
Okay. Yeah.
A class from Onion Lake wants to know the difference between storytelling and legends.
Legendary. Those are the atayukana. That's what the legends are. Atayukana. And then those atayukanak are literally what we would call legends, like legendary people, human beings that were here. And this is why we still talk about them. So bringing it a little closer, I was watching hockey yesterday, and one of the legends was being mentioned, and that's Wayne Gretzky, right? The greatest of all time. And we also had another legend in Saskatchewan, homegrown, Gordie Howe, right? So that's a different type. So those type of legends, we have our own legends as well. And that's what a legend would be. And we still learn from their walk. We still learn the way they lived. There's still teachings and later teachings that they have, right? So that's the difference between a story and telling a legend. Yeah. So this is, and a special time for us to tell legends is right now, when that first snow starts hitting the ground and things are starting to rest, that once we're very alive, moving, there's even flowers that come up, and as where the sun goes, they look at the sun as the sun paddles across this, the sky. So there's things like that that we don't even know about, that are because they're so quietly doing it, and they're just facing the sun all the way. And then again in the morning, so there's plants like that that we have. And then us, of course, ourselves, when you go like this, we're part of the sun. So you have the sun right here. There's the circle part of the sun, and then there's the rays right there. So when we have the sun that comes up, you'll see the rays come up on the east. And if you go like that, and this is like strictly elder teaching, this is awesome. It says, salute that sun once in a while, because that's your grandfather. This is where we come from. That sun is part of us. Mother Earth is part of us. And then it's even written in our hands, right? So I was like, wow, okay, right on. And the sun is good for us, especially in Saskatoon. We're so healthy. In Saskatchewan, in the prairie provinces, because we get so much sun, and we get like nice brown skin, not too red, hopefully not too much, right? That's not good for us either. But just that good vitamin D that it releases, so there's a lot of good chemicals that are released just by being out in the sun. And if you don't believe me, move to Vancouver. Anybody ever live in Vancouver? They have artificial lights over there, and they can't tan hides over there because it's so humid. So I have buddies over there that are sending hides over here. Like, can you finish this? So like, yeah. It's so wet over there. So so again, with this I'll go like this with the 5. So with these stories, when we're telling these stories, and here's one legend that's like, they call him the original Cree man. Okay, so this original Cree man was kind of like he's a celebrity. He was a celebrity, and I'll talk about him like he is still alive. He's very much around. And he likes to be named only in the wintertime, Wisagitsak. And so when you tell about Wisagitsak stories, there's one real funny, crazy one that I'm sure everybody's heard in a different fashion, but there's children that'll just absolutely never forget this story because how funny it is. And then there's also parents, men and women, elders, and medicine people. So those five audiences will get something from an Ateokan every single time it's told. Doesn't matter if it's like, I heard this already, but there's something in there for everybody. So here's an example. So Isagi Itzago, he's moving all the time. He doesn't stay still very long at all. And he's always moving, but it's because one, he's either looking for his older brother or his twin brother, Maekan, which is the wolf, or he's been called to go visit to a place, right? He's being honored because he's the first two-legged. So it's like, oh, this guy is very interesting. He just walks on two legs and it's like, you gotta see him, So the buzz, it's kind of like the paparazzi today when people are have a certain status, let's say if the prime minister came today, or the president of the United States was coming here, like he's supposed to be here in 15 minutes, everybody would be kind of like, whoa, I better get ready and make sure I'm very proper to shaking his hand and, make sure everything's kind of looking nice, So again, when Wisagitsak was going around at that time, it's the same thing. The birds would get ready, the animals would get ready, everything would get ready because this is like this two-legged is coming. You got to see him walk, it's very interesting. It doesn't fly, he doesn't even walks on two legs. So people would get really excited. So or beings would get really excited. So he was coming, and everywhere he went, there was kind of like a little buzz that followed him. And he was a showman. It was kind of like, the way I always explain it is like, just imagine if like somebody that was on like let's say, let's use Aquaman, what's his name? Jason Momoa, very handsome, very big, right? And like long hair, tattoos, real muscular, and then just imagine him coming in here. And then everybody's just happy that he's here. And then he just comes and sits down and like very boring, very, like what's so special about this guy, right? So Jason, if he was going to come here, he's very extraordinary. You can visit him. You want to just look at him. He was like, holy smokes, this guy is a big man, and he's handsome and he's so, very kind, very. So this is the way Wisagitsak was wherever he moved. So this is why the buzz grew, because he was genuine, he was unique, he was the first human being to be coming around this area. So, but just like when something human happens to these celebrities, there's like 50 different pictures, and they're like just getting ripped apart. So these things happen too. That's why the funny stories happen, because they do human things, right? So he's finished. He just finished a fast. This is where I'm going to start it. So he used to do fasts all the time, and we still do fasts today because of Wisagitsak as well. But fasting is a really good human thing for us to do, and it reminds us when we're in fasting, we start thinking about people, we start missing people, we start thinking of food and water, and then sometimes you kind of want to rest, so you have a little sleep, and then you get up, and then maybe you just want to sing. So it's just like you're by yourself and you're laying there, sitting there, and so you're just trying to keep yourself busy. And then while you're fasting, you start missing people. You start, thinking, what am I going to do after this fast is done? So he finished his, and what he did was he was very hungry, And he was looking around and he was like, geez, I wish I had a duck or something, you know, and he just loved ducks because ducks were always like, just they were always on each other, like the mallards, the ones with the green heads. Those always punished him. Like if he was sleeping, there's one story where those ducks all got together. He's like, come on, guys, let's push this tree on this guy here. He's snoring, you know, boom, hit him. So he was always like after ducks. And but he couldn't find any. They weren't there. Scott Muggy, wait, there's nothing there. Eventually he was looking and he saw the bear. Oh, the bear. I'm glad to see the bear. And then he says, oh, the bear's eating this berry. And then those berries are here too. So I'm gonna start eating these berries too. He says, hey, what's good for the bear? What if I can remember? It's good, will be good for me. So he starts eating. And then there's like a spruce tree right there, looking like an evergreen tree right there. And then there was a hill. There was a hill right beside where the bear was eating the trees, the berries. And then he would roll up. I mean, he would climb up and it would roll down. And then he was an older bear. And then what he didn't see was the bear would go up to that tree after he rolled down and he would go scratch his back. And, you know, it's like when you have a scratch or an itch back there, a perfect tree like that is good to have. But what he didn't see was the bear was also scratching his butt on the tree, right, on that particular tree. And but he was wolfing these berries down, and they're called uginiak. They're rose hip berries. And rose hip berries, they are really good, and they're all over the place. These rose hip berries, if you eat one, they say is equivalent to eating 3 oranges. So that's how much vitamin C is packed into these uginiak. And they're actually, you can eat them all year round. But like the bear, don't eat all of them, okay, whole. So what happens is what Usagitak was supposed to do, and he could have did it, but the bear has these long claws. Of course, he's not gonna dig. Why the bear was climbing up and rolling down was because the bear loves to play. Doesn't matter how old you are. The bear teaches us that we should play all the time. We should tumble, we should roll, we should enjoy life, right? But the thing that he didn't find out was as he was rolling, the berries that the bear was eating were going through his guts, and then they were coming out in the back. And if you look into these berries, okay, and you peel them open, there's lots of seeds. It's packed with seeds, right? And on these seeds, they have like little barbs on the seeds, and they're very sticky. They're hard, and they should be popped out. But if you don't happen to pop them out, they're gonna work their way through. They're not gonna digest, right? And when they come out on the other side, you have itchy butt, right? So that's what was happening with the bear. It was having this itchy butt, and but he had a tree. Usagitak didn't have a tree, and he didn't know that it was going to happen. So he starts walking, and then he's like, oh, good, that helped me a little bit, you know, at least I have something in my stomach. And then because he didn't have anything in his stomach, they made their way through quite fast. And then he started, I guess they started coming out in the back, right, these seeds. And then he was looking around, and he's like, "Days, you know, I don't want to scratch, but I gotta make sure nobody's looking." And he scratches back there, right? And then so he keeps on walking, and then as he's walking, the more and faster he's walking, the more that he's digesting, and the more these seeds are coming out his backside, his bum. And then so he starts itching. And what happens is he's walking, and he's still looking for food. So he's looking around, and then he's looking as well as like make sure that nobody's looking, and he scratches right real fast. And then he's still walking, looking around. Geez, this is annoying, you know. And he starts scratching, 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 and then nobody's around. And then eventually, he didn't realize what he did, but because of the excessive scratching, he gets skeeved, right? So he walked around in a big circle, and then he came back, and then here he did a big round circle, but he saw somebody had walked there. Somebody was like, oh, somebody's tracks, he says, eh? And then he's looking and he's scratching, and eventually he starts following this track, and then he goes, whoa, look at this. So he grabs this, he's like, my relative left me a piece of dry meat. So he grabs this dry meat, and then Kagyo, he says, he's looking at it, and he's like, yes. And he starts walking a little faster, and he starts eating this dry meat, right? And then at the same time, he's taking a little bigger steps, walking a little faster, but at the same time, he's scratching, follows this trail, you know, and he's trying to catch up to his relative. And then he says, whoa, two of them. And then he goes, oh, another dry meat, right? So he grabs that one. And then he's walking faster and faster, scratching his butt, walking all the way around, big circle. 3 people, right? So another dry meat, bonus, you know? So he's really happy. Really good day for him as far as he's concerned. He's got berries and dry meat. What more do you want to ask for? And then eventually this little bird kind of gets curious, because that's what birds do. Birds will come hang out, and they'll come check things out from that viewpoint up there. And then he's looking, and then he's seeing this crazy, like Usagi-tag is like walking in a big circle, scratching his butt, and then he sees what he picks up, right? And he's seeing from a different viewpoint, this bird. And then he says, whoa, did I just see what I just saw there, you know? And then so sure enough, it goes, whoa, and then says, and then that bird yells out, "Usagi-tago migi me too." He says, eh? And then again, "Usagi-tago migi me too." He says, eh? And then Usagi-tag looks at his, you know, what he was eating, and then he says, "Oh, Wes, get out of here!" You know, and then he grabs his dry meat, and what that bird was telling everybody was, Usagi-tag is eating his scab. So that was his scab that we were scratching off back there. so he grabs his scab, and he's like, "Get out of here, bird, quit saying that," you know, and he throws this his scab at this bird. And where the bird was perched was on a, what we call a squatic. So a squatic is a birch tree. And on the birch tree, this scab hits that birch tree, and that bird is going around and telling, you know, Usagi-tag's eating his scabs, you know, Usagi-tag's eating his scab. And then on that birch tree, we still see that fungus, and that's what we call chaga today. Yeah, so that's the medicine that we have. And it's cool because when you see it, it's because like you can go right into the science of this medicine, and like there's just skinning the surface like just of what it can do, but it really actually stains the birch. Like if anybody ever goes chaga hunting, you'll see that chaga, and it'll be stained at the bottom, just like it, you know. So if you can go hunting for that, it's very hard to find. You gotta look for it. You have to find it. And so here's the cool part of that. Okay. So now the little ones, they're just gonna remember, you know, oh, that was crazy that the bear, you know, and the Usagi-tag were scratching their butt, you know, and they'll remember it. And then all these different audiences that they'll remember all these different things that were associated with that. But the cool one was this one. When they started learning about kind of like all the different things that were associated there, there was those different medicines, just like those berries. those berries was, you know, those you can make jelly. You can make, you can boil those to make tea. And then you can just eat them like that, but make sure you pop the seeds out, right? Because of the story, but they're very good for colds, very good for, and you can store them, you dry them out, and then in a need basis, you have your medicines there. Then the other one was the tree, the spruce tree. It has a lot of medicinal properties in there. Let's say if you do have an infection of some sort, you can use that spruce pitch and it'll take that, it's an antibacterial. And then lastly, the usagitag umigi, yeah, the chaga, you know, and people are, because of its properties and it's really condensed medicine, I always say, don't drink too much of it. And I've heard stories of people like overdoing it with that medicine and then like creating kidney stones and like those type of things because it's so condensed. Like people are like, you gotta drink this medicine, it's so good. Yes, it's good, but it's like just like anything else, like take it easy on it, right? So everyone was really drinking it for a little while, but it is good medicine. It's very good medicine as a tea, and then we add it to different medicines as well. But yeah, we promote those, and then that's just one atayokan, right? With Wisagitsak. That one has probably like 100 for sure that I know about, but maybe I know about 20 of those good ones, but all of them will leave something like that. Yeah. Any other questions for? What schools are all zooming in? Yeah, cool.
Thank yous. Thank yous on here, Pierceland, Onion Lake. St. Green, Saskatoon. Hillman Central School. Arsapeshi School.
Oh, wow, good. That's good. I'm very glad that they made it available for the schools. Oh, okay, yeah.
Soto Heritage School.
Okay, good. Yeah.
Fort Murray.
Fort Mac, wow, that's all over the place, eh? Yeah.
Because their school's done.
Oh, okay, okay. Yeah. Any questions here? Okay, or here, please.
I just wonder about protocol about storytelling. So are there certain people only who should be storytellers, or people who have heard these stories over and over again? Are they free to share them with other people, or can only certain people be storytellers? And how much license can you take as a storyteller to throw in a few extra details, like the paparazzi? I could see that might have been told about, that might not have existed 100 years ago in the stories.
Yeah, I think connecting with your audience, that's the beauty of those stories, and that it's like language too. There's a term called language engineering, and it's the same thing with storytelling engineering, where you can sort of adapt those, because a lot of those, like let's say during COVID, our community was shut down. Like we had security at the entrance, and then you couldn't leave, or you couldn't, you had to make sure you were very specific if you were going to leave, what you were going to go for, whether it was toilet paper or whatever. But it was like the medicines, right? And then so what had happened was um, we needed to figure out a way to transfer that knowledge where we're not panicking, we're not panic buying based on like a sickness that something that we know can help us. And that's what happened. And we had to go back to those stories. And then as far as protocols, yes, those medicines are there, but then there are protocols where I would say it would be good to hang out with knowledge keepers because they'll know exactly, because even on a tree, on a birch tree, what you think might be chaga could be something else. And then you'll be like, oh, that's not chaga. And it's the same thing with, let's say something that you can buy in any Sobeys or whatever, which is mint tea, right? There's a way where you can go get it out in the, in a clean place where you want to pick, but there's a one that looks kind of like a little different. Yeah, it's kind of like acts like a little trickster in a way. So you have to, and then the crazy thing is like, if you pick mint, and you can only try this test once, if and you can smell it when you're walking, you're like, oh, I smell mint, right? It's here. And then you start looking around, and then all you have to do is just touch it a little bit and it'll release that beautiful odor, right? It was I shouldn't say an odor, but a smell, beautiful smell. And then there's a way where you can test it if you're not sure, and it's you roll a leaf in your fingers, and then you smell and you're like, okay, this is definitely it. The other one, if you roll your finger on it and it doesn't release the smell, you know that's not, but it only works once, because once you have that smell on it, and all of a sudden everything smells like mint. Yeah. So again, I think it's that it's like it's good to privilege the elders too. It's good to privilege the storytellers, and they're out there. You just have to seek them out and just start asking people who are the good storytellers, and then that means us doing our work too and databasing, finding out who are the ones that we can consider storytellers, and then bringing them up, asking them and saying that, like, here's your chance, can you do it, so we have lots of work to do. Those are good questions that you asked.
A student asked, what does the fungus on the tree look like?
It's like black and orange, brownish color, and it's like it just depends. Sometimes it's a small chunk, all the way to like really big chunks like that. Yeah, but you can probably use Google and then make sure it's like on a birch tree for sure, because there's lots of different, you'll see lots of different fungus that grow on trees. So you always want to make sure like you're doing it with somebody that'll be able to show you.
How would you spell the Cree name of that chaka?
Wisagi Tsagumigi. Well, there's actually two words. Well, there's Wisagi Tsagumigi, and then there's Pusagan. Pusagan is P-O-S-A-K long A-N, Pusagan. Yeah, and then Omigi, Wisagi Tsag is let's see, W-I-S-A-H-K-C-H-A-C-H-K, and then Omigi is O-M-I-K-I-Y. Yeah, Omigi. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right. So the last one is kind of like, just because we have so far and wide that we have, and it's like has to do with that flood story. And there's two stories that I know dealing with this Turtle Island. One of them has to do with this sky woman, we'll say, as she fell. As she was falling from this other realm to this realm, this was a water world. And then as she fell, there was Wapasuak, which are swans. They went to go catch her with their wings. And then they dropped her down on this water world. And then this is where get introduced to what we call the turtle. And the turtle pops up out of this water world, and then she's dropped on there, and then by these swans. And this lady that was falling gets dropped, and then with their feathers on this turtle's back, this is where we get the 13 moons and the 28 days with their feathers etching that on the back of this turtle. So that's the first one, and that's kind of a little longer one. And there's stories and songs that are associated with that transferring of, and it's literally Mother Earth falling down. And she's when she arrived here, this water world was so beautiful to her. She was looking around, and she was so amazed at this, how beautiful this place was. And then she started crying out of, when you see something beautiful, you sometimes that emotion comes out, and then her tears fell on this turtle's back. And then this is where medicine started growing, and she started fertilizing this turtle's back and started understanding the beauty of Mother Earth, this earth. So it's a part of the creation story. And then the other one is specifically a smaller island, which is North America. And this time the flood happened. And after the flood happened, there was like 3 beings that were chosen to go get a little bit of dirt, because there was no island, no nothing. There was just like a thing called utut, and there was a float, something that was floating. And when they were, when finally the turtle, they did get the little bit of speck of dirt, and it was the muskrat that grabbed it. And they were trying to find out who's gonna put this dirt, like who's going to be responsible for carrying this dirt, because, and then that's where the turtle came out again. And the turtle said, "Oh, I'll carry that land. I'll carry that turtle. I mean that back on my back." And so I'm just translating this in my head, so it's just coming out all jumbled up in English. But he said, so they put it on the back. And then Usagi-chan started blowing on this turtle's back, and then that land started growing from there off of that turtle's back and started going wider and wider. And then as it was starting to grow, the wolves were put into action there, and they started circling this land, and they started making it grow bigger and bigger and bigger as it was expanding. So this is where the idea of Turtle Island come from. It was a after flood story. It's a Turtle Island. And we also knew just from that story that we had cousins that were from different races that were all over, and there was 5 of them. And you'll see one of my uncles will probably mention them, that there was 5 nations or 5 races in the world that we knew about based on that flood story. And they were on different islands, but we just happened to be on this island. And then they knew that all of our different relatives were going to come join us on this island already too. They knew that. Now, and this is pretty cool, because like if there's people in Slave Lake or in that part over there, I'm guessing this was probably on the East Coast where this Utut happened, because it was cool because it was a fresh new land that was made, and they could see this. All the animals were there, all these different beings were there, the moose, buffalo, even the little beings were there. Everything was there, looking at this new island being formed in front of them. And then nobody wanted to step on this new land. Nobody, right? And any guesses in here who stepped on that island first? Any guesses? Who's courageous? Who's kind of maybe not all there? So like people are like, and the beings, like the 4-leggeds, are like, "No way, I'm not stepping on there," But there was one that was like really courageous that always pops up in a lot of our stories, and it happened to be the squirrel again. right? It was a squirrel. And the squirrel jumps off and everybody's kind of looking like, what's gonna happen, you know? Squirrels kind of, you know, the way they act and the way they're running around, stop and look and then keep on going. So then all of a sudden they're like, okay, it should be safe. The squirrel didn't sink or explode or anything, right? And then the first one that jumped off was Mayakan. Mayakan started traveling towards the east. And then how that canine, the canine family, how they act is that if there's like, let's say this little cord right here, if they're running down that cord and they keep on going, and then they'll for sure, like either that day or sometime sooner or later, they're gonna come back right on that trail. So they're very habitual and they go back on the trails all the time. Doesn't matter if it's a fox, coyote, dogs do that, wolves do that. So that one was the one that created the creeks and the rivers on Turtle Island, created in Mississippi, Saskatchewan River, Wawaski, Susipi, all these different Missouri River, all of those that you see, all those rivers, that's the one that created those ones. And then Atik went north, and Atik is the caribou, and the caribou has like hooves, and that one was the one that created those like Canadian shield, the way it looks like rocky through the hooves. And then another one stepped off eventually, and that was the bear. And the bear kind of is big, kind of, you know, walks like that, and went straight west towards where the mountains are. And because it was so brand new at the time, these islands, the bear from that one story, you guys know that goes up, rolls down, you know, lays like this, turns like this, and they're very heavy. And then that's the one that made the foothills the way they look, because it was rolling, toss, you know, just playing and so on. So it was very heavy. So that's why if you go to the mountains now, you'll see kind of like rolling hills like that. And that was the bear. And then there was one last one that was sent south. And that one never actually returned to come, because they were actually supposed to go back and then come tell, how big's this island? How big's this island? And they all came back except the bird. And the bird flew south and just never returned. So that's, we're assuming that's probably possibly the condor, or went to South America, but they just kept on coming, didn't come back to tell how far this island went that way. But that's the genesis of Turtle Island. And you know how special it is to so many different nations, so many of our relatives now that have joined us here. But I guess that's the closing. That would be my closing for Atayokiwan and kicking this off. And then again, I apologize for being late, but like hopefully that went by really fast.